All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CO Pod. I'm your host, Caroline, and today I'm joined by Brad Huebner.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on, Caroline.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I just kind of want to start off this podcast. Just tell me a little bit more about you. I'd love to know more.
So I born, raised in Southern Indiana. Been here my whole life, with the exception of a 4-year stint into the Marine Corps after high school. But came back here. This was the roots. This is where I wanted to be. And then after a little bit of trying to figure out what I wanted to do and trying different jobs, I started a construction business. And then fast forward to today, I'm doing more business coaching for contractors. So, I mean, that's kind of the overview of Brad Huebner.
Those are the Spark Notes version.
That's right.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that construction business you started. When did you start it? What was it? What were you guys doing?
Yeah. So this is also kind of a long story. In high school, I took architectural drawing. Back then, they had it was like a 3 credit hour type of trade, industry thing. And so I took architectural drawing. I thought I wanted to be an architect. I did that for my junior, senior year. So I had lots of architectural, experience, understanding building, how buildings go together and all that stuff. And then I realized you had to actually have good grades to be an architect to get into school. That's why I went down the military route, because you don't have to be smart to do that. Uh, Kid a little bit there. Yeah, I kid a little bit there, but uh, I found myself several years after getting out into the opportunity to go work as a superintendent for someone, a developer, a local developer who was basically building his own stuff. And with that architectural background, it kind of helped me get into that position, because it was about reading blueprints. It wasn't doing the physical work; it was just more of the supervisor stuff of it. Long story, there a couple of years, he had some financial troubles. I ended up going to work for our finish carpenter, that the subcontractor that we were using for finish carpentry. I actually went to go work for him, and that was where I kind of started as a in the trades doing carpentry. He taught me a lot of stuff, and then I ended up like being his lead guy, running his jobs and stuff. And then after a couple years or so of that, this was like in 2009. So this was like 2008, 2009. Housing market kind of slowed down. We didn't have much work, and so I was just kind of like, well, I'm only getting like 20 hours a week. I could do this on my own and do better. Like, even if I'm only working 20 hours a week, still, I'm gonna be making more money. And so that kinda it was kinda like, I can do this better than what I'm currently doing situation. And, I had $1,000 in the bank. I had a pickup truck, and I just started out as really as a handyman, because it was like that was the easiest thing to get into. And so I started doing that, and then over, several years of doing that type of work, it turned into more remodeling. Towards the end, I was doing both handyman and remodeling services, and I did that for 11 years before I started doing coaching.
So why did you make that switch from business owner and doing carpentry into coaching people?
So it was actually so about 9 years into the business, I was, like, still banging my head against the wall. I always joke and say, like, the reason why it took so long was because that's what, like, persistence and ego and stupidity, if you want, kind of come together. And it's like, I don't know enough information, but I'm stubborn enough. I guess stubborn is the better word than stupid, but stubborn enough to keep trying to figure it out on my own. And finally, after 9 years, I was like, okay, this obviously, I don't know what I'm doing here. There's something missing. And so I got coaching. Like, I went out and sought for coaching. I started doing a bunch of research, watching YouTube videos, and got into coaching, and then started applying a lot of those things into my construction business, and quickly, like, started making changes in the business. Right, started being more profitable, really having more of a real business. But in the process of going through the coaching, I kind of fell in love with the idea of coaching. And I always knew, like, maybe when I'm 65 and retired, maybe I'll be a consultant, I'll give back. But I've always liked teaching. I've always liked being that kind of person, and so it really was. It was a total God thing. It was just the timing of it worked out, the situation. I could go on and list 30 things that had to line up perfectly with the stars and the moon and everything. And it just worked out that I was able to, in the beginning of 2022, start doing coaching full time.
Wow, that's incredible. It really takes a special kind of person to be a teacher and definitely very, very different than
Mhm.
managing a team, managing a company. What are some of those differences that you've noticed?
Well, so from a marketing perspective, it's totally different. Marketing a local business in your local market is totally different than trying to market a coaching business on a national market. And so for me, like really the first 2 years, and even till to this day, is has been a struggle to figure out the right type of marketing, the right things that work. So that's been a struggle is really just figuring out that aspect of it. But one of the main differences, and this is the other reason why I love coaching so much more than running a construction business, is the it's very gratifying. Like it's remodeling a bathroom, building a deck, whatever. That's great. The customer's like, "Oh wow, this is great, Brad. It's so amazing," and that feels good for about a week. And then it's on to the next project, more problems and stuff. And so yes, that's great, but whenever you get a text from someone, it's like, "Dude, you totally changed my whole life. Like, I've never made this much money. I'm finally getting to go see, go get off early to go see my kids, recital or whatever." Like that is 100 times more impactful than "Yeah, you did a good job on this bathroom."
Yeah, it feels good in the soul. It makes your heart warm, and that's a feeling that money can never buy.
Mm-mm.
That's really it's just something special.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I mean, I love doing it. I love the actual business side of it. I love, talking with people. And even if I wasn't getting paid for it, I would still enjoy that process.
Yeah, yeah, and do you do just, like, coaching for construction companies or for any kind of business?
It's mostly construction. I mean, pretty much construction, a lot of remodeling companies, general contractors, also like landscapers. The my program and kind of way I've set it up, it's really designed more for people or companies, I should say, that do bigger projects that have longer sales cycles, that have a large sales process. Because the core of what we teach, a lot of it is sales. And so, people that are going out and doing 5, 10 estimates a week, and they're spending 15, 20 hours a week in that process. It's a huge time suck for a lot of especially smaller businesses where the owner is the one doing the selling. And that's a huge area of growth improvement for their business that can make a enormous impact in their life for that matter.
Definitely. I wanna switch gears a little bit and go back in time to when you had your construction business. Think about when you just started out, everyone, when they start out their business, has some kinks to work out and some struggles they go through. What did you go through? What were some of those early phase struggles, if you had any?
Plenty. Like most of my coaching comes from all of the mistakes that I made. I made I made way more mistakes, yeah, than I ever did things right. You know what I mean? So the single biggest thing that I did wrong was I wasn't charging enough. Like literally that simple. I just wasn't charging enough to be profitable. But really, the other thing of that was like tracking the numbers, understanding the number side of it. Okay, so I bid it for this much, but the materials actually cost more, and the job took 20 hours longer than I thought it was going to. And how do you take that information and then process it and then use it for the next job so that you can actually be profitable on the next job? I didn't do job costing until 9 years later when I got coaching, you know, because I didn't know that that's what you were supposed to do. And it may seem, if people are watching this, it may seem kind of silly, but you got to keep in mind too, like back in 2009, early that 2015 era, that whole time, like there wasn't Facebook groups, there wasn't YouTube videos, there wasn't coaching programs online that told you how to do all this stuff. You only learned it by reading a book or a local person, a mentor or a local person that was like, "Hey, this is how I had a successful business." But you couldn't go online like you can today and get all of that information. So it sounds like today saying it sounds absolutely silly, but that just wasn't available, 20 years ago.
Yeah. And like when you're running a business, you have a whole team, you don't have time to sit there and scroll through every book, or I mean not even scroll, turn the pages on every book and go through all of those things, and there's so many little things, and it feels like when you miss one of those things, it's a big deal.
Well, and that's really what coaching is. Like all of the information that I teach and others teach is available online now. Like 100% of it. There are no quote secrets out there. Maybe somebody knows some marketing technique that does better than others, but there's really no secrets. So it's not a lack of information problem. I kind of like to use the term, like, let's say you had all the letters of the alphabet, you know, you have all of the information, but you don't know that goes before B and then C and then D. So you don't know what order to put this information in. And so the coaching and getting help is all about, this is what you need to do next. This is the order or the steps that you should do based specifically on your business in your market, at your size, at your revenue. Like it's going to be different for every single company out there.
Yeah, and every company is different, how they do things is different, every market. But with you and your services, do you have like a plan for people to follow, like a general one?
I don't know if we talked about it, but I did have a new book recently that came out, the Contractor Profit Blueprint. This is kind of like the 4-step uh, blueprint, if you will, that I use in my coaching program that I teach all of my contractors. And it's really to get them to focus on the 4 things that are going to be important to them and in that order, but not before. So one of them, like the last step is growth, right? How to put systems in place and growth. And you may say, well, systems are important. You need to have systems. Yes, they are. But if you're not making enough money, period, there's no system on earth that's going to actually get you out of that hole. So we have to make money first before we worry about systems.
Definitely. What were some of those? You mentioned those 4 steps. Can you give me a little brief preview of those 4 steps?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. First one is what I call the 7-figure mindset mastery. So the first section is actually all about mindset. And this is not sexy. This isn't what people wanna learn about. It's not. I don't want you to tell me that I have an ego or that I'm not good at learning or what leadership problem, but it's like, I get that, but, for me, the most impactful thing over the years collectively that made the biggest difference is changing my mindset around what's possible. And so for a lot of people, a lot of contractors, small business, service-based businesses, this thought of I can't charge more because no one's going to pay it, right? No one's going to pay this much. No one's going to, in my market. And I hear this literally every single day. That is a mindset problem. That's not a factual statement. That's an incorrect, non-factual statement. You have a mindset problem. And if you don't fix that first, I can tell you that you need to raise your prices by 20%, but if you don't believe that you're worth that and you don't believe that people are willing to pay that, you're never going to be able to get that money because you'll be sabotaging yourself through that whole sales process thinking, man, this is too much money. They're never going to pay this. And that will come through, you as you talk, and they will pick up on that uncertainty.
Yeah, the mindset is definitely the biggest thing. I completely agree with that. You have to get right up in here to be able to get right down here.
Absolutely. That's number 1. Number 2 is pricing for big profits, and that's really just making sure we're doing the correct markup and we're getting the right profit margins. Number 3, which is kind of the biggest one, it's accelerate your sales, but that's really marketing and sales. And that's of all of these steps, that's the one that's going to take the longest. You're going to have to invest the most time and energy into. And then the last one is systems for growth and freedom. And so once we're making enough money, we can, and we have the right mindset and we have the right systems, or not systems, but the processes for marketing and sales, then we can take all of the money and all of the extra time we've saved and start throwing in at systems to grow the business and really invest in rapid growth.
That's awesome. It's such a comprehensive view. You're not just focusing on the business and focusing on the things on the paper, but you're also focusing on the person behind the business, which is arguably the most important thing.
I would say it is, and so I always say people come for the coaching and they stick around for the community because there is it's a group coaching that I do. There's a community aspect to it. We have a WhatsApp channel that we talk and you build camaraderie and guys are joking back and forth and it's a huge element. When you if you're like, say you're new and you get in and you're like, "Man, I know I need to raise my prices, but I'm just not confident." But you're seeing like every day guys are saying, "Hey, I just sold a job at this profit margin. I just sold a job for this. Here, I just collected a deposit for this." That's motivating. Like to see that on a constant basis of like everyone else is doing the same thing that I'm doing, in terms of the type of work, and they're having success. So that means that I do have a possibility here. I can achieve that. And so the community aspect and that reinforcement that goes with that is absolutely huge. And that plays into the mindset, it plays into the emotional side of it, right? Because there's definitely emotions in it. And yeah, I don't talk about this because it's not like something it's not part of the program, but it's not uncommon to get a message from one of my clients and be like, "Hey, I'm having a personal problem. Can I talk to you? Do you have 5 minutes to talk about this? Dealing with this situation at home. I'm dealing with this personal situation. Do you have any advice?" And so a lot of that is not business at all. Like it's not even business related, but it's really more relational, and that's one of the things that the way I have it set up is that I love is because we're not trying to, I'm not trying to get 10,000 people into my program. We keep it small and intimate and really make impactful changes for a small number of people.
It's sometimes it's not about the quantity, it's more about the quality. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love how you're focusing on that. And I think it's just super important because, sometimes we get so busy with our day to day and we forget to take a step back and think about there's a real person in here and I have feelings and emotions and I'm not just work all the time. So being able to have a mentor or a coach like you that's there past the business, that's also there for the personal is really just incredible.
I don't care who it is but if you're a business owner, you need to have peer groups or someone in your corner that you can talk to or root for you, because there's definitely going to be times where it's bad, where you're losing sleep at night, where you don't know what to do. And so, again, I don't care. It doesn't have to be me, but I mean, just somebody in your corner to help you through that is absolutely vital for any type of entrepreneur.
Yeah, everyone needs their own cheerleader,
Absolutely.
or quite a few.
I would say more along the lines of lots of them instead of just a few.
Gotta get a whole crowd going out there.
Think about this. If I put you in a room with 20 millionaires, right? Don't you think that after a short period of time that you will probably become a millionaire because you're surrounded with all of those people and their habits and they're telling you what you shouldn't and should be doing? Like you can't not win basically when you surround yourself like that. So just to use that as a silly example, but same thing when you put yourself around other contractors that are having success and doing that, you can't not win.
And then you're motivated by other people's success too, and that just it fuels that fire even more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking about fueling fire, you are super successful in all the different routes you've gone in life. What has kept you going? What's your secret, so to say?
That is a good question because a lot of times I struggle. Like a lot of times I don't want to keep going. A lot of times I just want to sit on the couch and be absolutely worthless.
With a
And
bag
so,
of potato chips too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, ice cream, whatever, chocolate chip
Yeah.
cookies. I don't know, but like it's not. I would say I'm not like super successful at everything I do in life, but I think, which is interesting. I contribute most of this to being in the military. And so going in the Marines, prior to going in the Marines, I was a typical teenage kid. I did play some sports. But I wasn't like a hard worker, always wanted to be successful kind of guy. But going to the military, yeah, going to the military, especially the Marines, like you learn what hard work is, you learn persistence, you learn dedication, all that stuff. And I think that's just carried through. And it's just really this kind of insatiable thirst for wanting to do better, And so, like I adopted Tony Robbins. He had a thing. My first CD on book ever, like the first audio book I bought, which was on CD, because this is back. I'm dating myself.
I miss CDs, honestly. I do.
Yeah,
I miss them.
yeah. I still have all a bunch of CDs, but anyways, early 2000, maybe 2001 ish, something like that. I got out of the Marines in '99. I'm dating myself now, but early 2000s, I got the Lessons in Mastery CD set by Tony Robbins, and on there he talked about CANI, constant and never ending improvement, right? That acronym, and I just adopted that, made it my motto. And so for me, like, I just never stop learning. I'll be 80 years old on my deathbed or whatever, and I'm still going to be trying to learn something. At least I'm assuming that. I don't know that for sure, but that's just kind of my trajectory.
We'd all hope so, right? That our brains are still going at 80 and we can keep
Yeah,
learning.
God willing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me switch gears here a little bit and talk about technology. This
Sure.
has been one of the huge things in the construction industry. We're really seeing that evolution and that transformation. What kind of role do you think technology has in the industry?
I am a big tech nerd. Okay, so this is yeah, I love this topic. So, and I believe it's one of the things that actually allowed me to continue going early on because and I should say that I had a couple like previous like part-time side businesses. And so the first business, like legitimate, licensed business that I started, even though it was part-time, was as a like computer IT guy, was like building computers, doing setting up networks, that type of stuff. Right. It was just yeah, like, but this was part-time on the side and stuff, and so and I actually went to community college after the Marines for, IT, so I got my A+ plus certification, if you guys know what that is. So anyways, I have a lot of tech background, right? And then I went to work for the cable company, and I was one of the few guys that knew how to work on the cable modems because this was new technology when the cable modems launched, and so, like, I was the IT smart guy, if you will. So IT running through my veins. I love technology, and I see technology as a force multiplier. Right? If you implement tech, whether it's a software or a device, out in the field, it's allowing you to do the job of two or three people in some certain situations, and it's just accelerating the rate of which you can do things. And so, like, for me, technology, like when I started in 2009, again, websites were just like kind of starting. Like, you had Yahoo and AOL had websites. Basically, you had like bulletin boards. Nobody contractor wise had websites. Nobody. And so I was the first and I even built it myself. Like, I learned Microsoft front page, learned how to code, and built my own website. It was terrible. Like, it was absolutely like
You
it was
really are a
absolutely
tech nerd. That's
yeah,
awesome.
it was terrible, but it was still I had a website and nobody else did.
Mhm.
And then I just applied that type of to everything. Whenever, a new like Company Cam, you guys may have heard of that before. I mean, when it first came out, before anybody even knew it existed, I was using it, you know? I was using CRMs and softwares before anyone even knew what the heck they were. And so, like, I always use technology as a way to allow me to run the business efficiently, especially even when I was like a one man show. And then even when I had multiple employees, but I was still doing all the office work before I hired an office manager, like just using technology for all of that, absolutely a requirement. I mean, there's a lot of more options now than, whenever 10 years ago when I was doing it, for sure. QuickBooks was like the main thing, even for like contractors. Like, you just created an invoice, created an estimate, and that was through QuickBooks, and that's all that you had available. And you had to like do your project management through, Google Calendar, or invest in some, multi-thousand dollar software that you couldn't afford because it was, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I mean, with the I don't want to say the ease of development, but it's definitely easier today to develop things than it was, 10, 15 years ago. Like there's more options and it makes, but you can now find things that work specifically for your business that are going to help you, get what you want. Back then, you had to get something and it was like, well, this would do 60% of what you wanted to do. And then you had to have three other pieces of software to do the other 40%, and then your tech stack's like this long because none of them talked to each other, none of them was integrated. They didn't have this feature. And now a lot of, companies you're able to incorporate a lot of this stuff and make it so much easier. So like if you're not using any kind of software in your business, shame on you.
I mean, in this day and age, how can you not be? I would genuinely, I would be so shocked. And please, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. But if there's any company out there that's not using technology, how are you doing it? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious.
I mean, I on my podcast that I have, I talked few episodes ago about kind of I just had like an open riff session where it was like I didn't have a specific topic. I'm just going to share some things on my mind, and one of them was about technology and in the future. And like so, like right now, you know, VR is available. Like you can use VR, and say you're a kitchen remodeler, you can develop their kitchen. Go into their house, throw a VR headset on their head, and they can see their kitchen in real time. Maybe even interact with it, and like that is available now. That's not future stuff. But very, very few people will take advantage of that, maybe 1%. And the 1% that do take advantage of that technology are gonna be light years ahead of, 3 years from now, when that's the norm, you're already 3 years ahead of everyone else, and, like, you can't recoup that lost time.
I bet that's what people were saying a few years ago about AI as well. And now look where we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another area is, like, reviews. So Google reviews came out, I don't remember when they actually started, but again, this was like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Nobody was collecting reviews. I was, so I had hundreds of reviews and I had like 125 five-star reviews for my business and my closest competitor had like 12. And so like when someone goes online and they see that, it's a no-brainer. They're going to call me first.
I mean, on Amazon, I'll always buy the thing with more reviews
Yeah,
every single time.
absolutely.
Every single time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this is probably actually going to be the hardest question I'm going to ask you
Okay.
today. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received or ever given out?
So from a general across the board, I wouldn't say it's advice. I think it's more guiding words, and that's honestly is the 10 commandments. Like that, if you just follow the 10 commandments, you're gonna have a pretty good life in terms of achievement and stuff. Um, but I think from a growth perspective, it's to never stop learning. It's that Kanai mentality, right? It's just always be a student. You're never gonna arrive. There's never gonna be a time where you're like there was a commercial or a video I saw one time, maybe it was on TV or whatever, but it was like the guy is on his computer, and then he sits back and he's like, "I did it." And she's like, "What?" He's like, "I've watched everything on the internet." Like he's completed everything on the internet. A funny commercial or something, and, like, that's never gonna happen for you. You're never going to know everything, you're never going to arrive, you're never going to be finished with the biggest project, which is your life, and so really it's just that constant and never-ending improvement rooted in good, solid moral and value compass.
I love that. I completely agree with that. I'm constantly evolving. And, you look at who you were a year ago and you're like, that's not me. I don't even recognize that person. And I think that's really a sign of someone who wants to be successful and just be a good person?
Mhm.
So, just to kind of round this out here, where can our audience find your book and your business? How can we get in touch with you? How can we see and hear more Brad?
Absolutely. So, of course, my podcast, it's the Hammer and Grind podcast. That's my logo right there. But you can go on any of the social media platforms. I'm the biggest on TikTok. Is where I do the most like engagement. You just search for Hammer and Grind Podcast, one word. You'll find me there. Of course, the podcast is on all of the podcasting platforms. But you can get the book or get more information. Go to the website. It's the same as name as the book. It's thecontractorprofitblueprint.com. And yeah, you can get the book, and there's some bonuses in there, like some free worksheets and stuff that you can get with that as well. But you can reach out to me there, and yeah, then we'll see if there's anything we can do for you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on here, Brad. This is really such a treat, and you have such incredible wisdom to share. And I know our audience is just going to be super stoked to hear all of this. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It was a blast. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, we'll see you guys all next week for another episode of CO Pod.